I secretly closed on a house for myself, then walked in and found my mom giving my brother and his wife a full tour, telling them they should have it instead of me. I tightened my grip on the keys, smiled, and made a move that turned their little gift into the family scandal of the year. My blood ran cold when I walked into my own house, a place I'd poured my soul into, and found my mother giving my brother and his pregnant wife a tour, telling them it should be theirs. The keys to my new life were still clutched in my hand, and in that moment, something shifted inside me. I was about to ignite a family scandal, and I wasn't going to back down. You see, buying that house was my quiet rebellion, a defiant stand after a lifetime of feeling invisible. I never planned to keep it a secret forever, but when no one ever really bothers to ask about your life, that silence, it just becomes a habit. And then this house, this little bungalow, it became mine. All mine. Every single dollar came from years of relentless saving, plus an inheritance from my grandma Elsie that I'd kept untouched, a silent promise to myself. My siblings, Leo and Sarah, they accepted help like it was their birthright. Me? I was cleaning teeth until my jaw ached, spending my weekends photographing strangers' weddings and graduations. I cut corners, learned to make rice 10 different ways, said no to every indulgence. There was no safety net for me, no one to swoop in. Just sheer exhaustion and this quiet thought, maybe someday, this will all pay off. The house itself wasn't glamorous. It was a small, 2-bedroom bungalow, creaky stairs, wallpaper that screamed another decade. But the moment I saw it, I knew. It wasn't about the house. It was what it represented, something I built, on my own, something no one gave me. I didn't tell my family, not for revenge, but because I knew exactly how it would go. My mother, Evelyn, would frown. Leo would laugh like it was some cute, quirky thing I'd done. And my father, Robert, he'd just nod, utterly unimpressed. They always saw me as Maya, the one who didn't need much. The quiet one, the one who just gets by. You know how it is. If you don't ask for help, they just assume you don't need anything at all. For a while, keeping it secret felt like safety. I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes and paint cans. I fixed the leaky sink myself, after 6 incredibly frustrating tutorials, mind you. I painted each room slowly, carefully, picking soft lighting, warm wood tones. Every single brushstroke felt like a small rebellion. No one to criticize my choices, no one to ask why I painted the bedroom dark olive green. No one to suggest I get rid of the mismatched antique mirror. And definitely no one to remind me that I was still single, like it was a problem I needed to fix. For the first time, I had a space that reflected me, not what others expected. I even kept my apartment near work, which gave me the perfect excuse to stay quiet. I told my coworkers I was helping a friend redo a house, which was partially true. The friend was me. The house was mine. My secret. Every free moment, I was there. Even when I wasn't fixing something, I'd sit on the back steps with a cup of tea, watching the leaves fall, letting the quiet remind me that I hadn't failed. I'd survived. I'd made it. And even if no one clapped for me, I could clap for myself. When my landlord mentioned a few break-ins, I decided to install a basic security system with cameras. Not paranoia, just practical protection for my investment. I told myself maybe one day I'd invite them all over, host a dinner, reveal everything. Maybe they'd finally see me differently. Maybe they wouldn't. But at least I could say I did this. That day never came. 6 weeks passed. I balanced 2 jobs, my apartment, and my house like parallel lives. My mother called occasionally, usually to talk about Leo's latest business move or Sarah's latest drama. When she asked where I'd been, I said, busy with work. She never asked what else I was busy with. I kept waiting for a moment that felt right, but it just never showed up. Then, on a gray Thursday, everything shifted. I was in the back office of the clinic, reviewing sterilization charts when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Front door. My stomach dropped. I tapped the alert. The video opened. There she was. My mother, Evelyn, at my front door with a key. She wasn't alone. Leo's wife, Chloe, stood behind her, a reusable shopping bag in hand. And behind them, a third woman, someone I didn't recognize, blonde, business casual, holding a folder. I watched, frozen. My mother unlocked the door like she'd done it 100 times. They stepped inside, laughing, chatting. The stranger said something, and Evelyn gestured grandly toward the living room. It took a full minute for the sickening realization to hit me. She was giving them a tour of my house, with my key, without my permission. My chest tightened. My skin prickled with ice. I suddenly remembered 3 weeks ago, when I had the flu, really bad. Couldn't drive myself to urgent care. I'd called Evelyn. She drove me, stayed while I got treated, took me back to my apartment. I'd been so foggy with fever that when she offered to grab my house keys, just in case you need anything picked up, I barely registered handing them over. I never asked for them back. I lowered the volume and watched the video, stuttering slightly as they moved from room to room. My house. My walls. My furniture. My refuge. They walked right in like it belonged to them. I kept watching. They went through the hallway like they were shopping. My mother's voice floated through the audio. The natural light in this room is lovely in the mornings. She opened the curtains I just hemmed last week. Chloe nodded. The stranger, who I now realized had to be a real estate agent or a stager, jotted notes. They stopped in the kitchen. My kitchen. I had sanded and stained those cabinets myself, replacing the knobs one by one after work, choosing a warm brass finish because it reminded me of the tiny diner where I used to eat pancakes after long shifts. My mother leaned against the counter, completely at ease, pointing out the original hardwood floors like she'd paid for them. The longer I watched, the colder I felt. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just stared at my phone, breathing through my nose, trying not to shake. When they reached the second bedroom, the one I was planning to turn into a small studio for photo editing, the agent gestured to the walls, speaking clearly, with a fresh coat of paint and maybe updated blinds, this could be a perfect nursery. Nursery? That word hit me like a slap across the face. I ended the stream. My hand stayed clenched around the phone long after the screen went dark. Back in the clinic, the fluorescent lights buzzed, merciless. Someone called my name. I didn't answer. Everything inside me had tipped sideways. I told Dr. Schmidt I had a migraine. I don't know how I made it to the parking lot without crumbling. I sat in my car, engine off, fists resting against the steering wheel, feeling the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. Not the dramatic, cinematic rage I thought betrayal would look like. Just a quiet devastation. They didn't even think to ask. Not my mother, not Leo, not Chloe. The idea that someone had entered my space, walked across my floors, opened my drawers, breathed in the scent of my soap without permission, made my skin feel foreign. By the time I got to the house, they were gone. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. But it didn't feel the same. I stood in the doorway, staring at the worn doormat, wondering how long they'd been planning this. Had she been waiting for the right moment to tell me her plan? I went through every room, searching for proof. A cushion out of place, a drawer slightly open, a missing glass. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but it all felt touched, violated, like someone had been pretending to be me while I wasn't looking. In the living room, I spotted something on the console by the window. A piece of paper, folded neatly. I picked it up. It was Evelyn's handwriting, slanted, purposeful, in blue pen on the back of a grocery store receipt, "This place is far too big for you. Think about what's really practical. You'll understand one day." No greeting, no signature, no apology. Just that. My throat tightened. I stood there, note in hand, and realized she didn't see it as mine. None of them did. In their eyes, I was just borrowing time, holding on to something until someone more deserving, someone with a husband, maybe a baby, could take over. I slept at my apartment that night, not because it was closer to work, but because I couldn't stomach being inside walls that had been trespassed. The next morning, I skipped my shift and drove straight to the house. I parked across the street, watching. I don't know what I expected. Someone slipping out with a duffel bag? A "for sale" sign on the lawn? Nothing happened, just silence. I texted Evelyn 4 words, "I need my key back." She replied 20 minutes later, "I still have it from when you were sick. You shouldn't be out there alone so much. We're just looking out for you." Looking out for me? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I sat on the floor, legs pulled to my chest, and stared at the blank wall I hadn't decided how to decorate yet. There had been so many moments I'd wanted to share with someone. How proud I felt the first time I fixed a leaky faucet. How warm the kitchen looked at dusk. How soft the bedroom was when it rained. But not like this. Not as a transaction, not as a gift to be reassigned. Later that evening, I checked the camera history. There was one other entry I hadn't seen, for days earlier, my mother alone, walking through with a measuring tape. My home had been a showroom, a secret she used for her own story. Maybe she thought I wouldn't notice. Or maybe she counted on me not saying anything, like I always didn't. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I didn't wait long. The next morning, I sat at my apartment's kitchen table, the note still folded in my pocket. My phone was on speaker. The screen lit up with her name. It rang twice before she answered. "You're up early," she said, her voice light, like we were just picking a brunch spot. "I saw the camera footage," I said, flatly. There was a pause. Not long, just enough for her to decide how she'd play it. "Oh," she said. "I figured you might eventually. You used a key I gave you for an emergency. You entered my house without permission. You brought people with you and you left a note." A sigh. The kind that always came right before the guilt trips. "You're making this bigger than it is." "No, you made it bigger the second you stepped inside. I only went because your brother and his wife are going through a tough time. I thought it might help to see what's out there. And that place, it's lovely, but it's too much for just one person, don't you think?" There it was. The thesis, the sentence that summarized every subtle dismissal I'd swallowed for years. "It's not too much for me," I said. "I bought it. I earned it. I live there." Another pause. I imagined her sitting at her kitchen counter, probably still in her robe, coffee half finished, not understanding why I was upset or pretending not to. "I know you worked hard," she said, like she was patting me on the head through the phone, "but it's not just about that. Houses are meant for families. It's a lot of space, a lot of responsibility. You're not even there full time. And with your schedule," I cut her off. "You don't get to decide what I can handle." "I'm not deciding. I'm worrying." "No, you're controlling." She inhaled sharply, clearly offended. "Don't speak to me like that. Then stop treating me like I'm 10. She laughed, but it was tight, defensive. "I'm your mother. I'll always care what's best for you. Caring doesn't involve sneaking into someone's home and showing it to a real estate agent." Now her tone shifted. "She's not an agent. She's a friend. She works in staging. I just wanted an opinion." "You wanted an opinion on how to give away something that doesn't belong to you." She was just looking. Nothing was decided. You're missing the point, I said, my voice rising. You shouldn't have been there at all. She's pregnant, Evelyn said, like that excused everything. I blinked. What? Chloe, your brother's wife. They haven't told anyone yet. I shouldn't have said it, but they're desperate. Their apartment is cramped and Leo's business isn't doing well. This house, it could be a real step forward for them. I stared at the wall, trying to process the weight of what she just dropped like it was weather talk. So, you walked into my home and imagined a future where I just handed it over. It's not about taking anything from you. Then, what is it about? She went quiet, then softly, you're alone. You have no partner, no children. You work too much. I thought maybe you'd see that this isn't practical long term, that it doesn't have to be yours forever. I pressed my thumb against the corner of the table, grounding myself. Let me say this clearly, I said. That house is mine. I paid for it. Every nail, every tile, every chipped bit of paint. It is not temporary. It's not transitional. It's not waiting to be handed off to someone you think is more deserving. You're being dramatic. No, I'm being firm. You're throwing away your family over a house. No, I said, my voice quiet but cutting. You're threatening to throw me away because I finally claimed something of my own. The line went silent for several seconds. Then she spoke, low and sharp. You've always been difficult. I almost laughed. No, I've always been quiet. That's different. I hope you can live with this choice. I've been living with your choices my whole life. I think I'll be fine. I hung up before she could reply. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. The kind of calm that only comes after a storm you didn't start, but you finished. I expected an explosion afterward. Messages, calls, accusations. But there was nothing. Hours passed, then a day, then two. Not even Leo reached out. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if I should have been softer. But then I pictured Evelyn standing in my hallway with a stranger, smiling like she owned the place, like I was just someone who got in the way. No. That door needed to be closed. This time, by me. I booked the locksmith the next morning. No hesitation, no second guessing. I didn't even wait for the weekend. I called from the back of the dental clinic during lunch, chewing on a protein bar while holding the phone between my shoulder and cheek. The woman on the line said she could have someone there by noon the next day. I told her I'd take off work. It was the most satisfying call I'd made in months. I arrived early. The locksmith was a man with calloused hands and a voice like gravel. He didn't ask questions, just nodded when I said, full change, all exterior locks. I watched him work, standing a few feet away like it was a medical procedure, as if staying close might make it feel more final, more mine. When he handed me the new keys, I held them like something sacred. Only you with copies? He asked. Yes, I said. Only me. That night, I slept at the house again. Mattress on the floor, surrounded by soft shadows and silence. But this time, the quiet didn't feel vulnerable. It felt earned. I didn't hear from anyone for 4 days. No texts, no voicemails, no awkward apologies disguised as check-ins. Just the absence I had apparently triggered by daring to say no. It stung, of course it did. But beneath the sting was something solid. For once, the silence felt like mine. On the 5th day, a car pulled into the driveway. I was in the kitchen unpacking groceries, listening to a podcast about art theft, when the notification pinged. Motion detected. Driveway. I set down the bag of spinach and walked slowly to the window. It was her, Evelyn. She didn't knock immediately. First, she stood on the porch, staring at the front door like she expected it to open on its own. Her purse was slung over one shoulder, her mouth pinched into that neutral expression she used when she was holding back a lecture. Then she tried the handle. When it didn't budge, her face changed. She knocked once, sharp, then again, louder. I stepped toward the door, heart thumping. I didn't open it. I spoke through the wood. You don't have a key anymore. A pause. I figured, she said, her voice flat, unreadable. I waited. I just wanted to talk. We were talking through the small glass panel beside the door. I saw her shift her weight. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. Maybe it was the barrier. Or maybe it was just the first time I'd refused to make it easy. I know you're angry, she said. I'm not angry. I'm done being quiet. Another silence. I only ever wanted to help. No, you wanted control. That's not fair. It's not up for debate. I could hear her inhale, then speak with that carefully controlled tone she used during PTA meetings and doctor's appointments. Your brother and his wife are going through something difficult. You don't know the whole picture, and I never will if people keep making choices behind my back. She stepped closer. I watched her hand hover over the door frame like she wanted to touch it. I raised you to be practical. No, I said. You raised me to be useful, to adapt, to expect less. Practicality was just the excuse. That's not true. Then why is it so hard for you to let me have something? Why does it bother you that I own this place? That I'm fine without help? That I didn't need permission? Her voice cracked just slightly. Because I don't want you to end up alone. I laughed, sharp and dry. You already made sure I was. I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was true. Every family dinner where my achievements were glossed over. Every time someone else's crisis became more important than my progress. Every assumption that I didn't need help because I wasn't falling apart loudly enough. She pressed her hand against the door. You think I don't see you, but I do. Too late. A long beat passed. Then she said, this is a mistake. You'll regret shutting people out. No, I said quietly. What I regret is letting you in. I stepped away from the door. I didn't wait for a reply. A minute later, I heard the car pull out of the driveway. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I finished putting away the groceries, sat at the kitchen table, and let the quiet fill the space again. Only this time, it was protected. It was mine. The silence stretched longer than I thought it would. At first, it felt like peace. I kept waiting for another knock, another voicemail, another demand disguised as concern. But the days passed quietly. No messages from Evelyn, no unannounced visits, just quiet. And then slowly, the superficial texts began. Leo sent the first one 2 weeks later. Hey, Mom's still pretty upset. Maybe reach out. A few days after that, another, no judgment. Just saying. This isn't worth blowing up the family over. Think about it. I didn't reply. Then my sister Sarah chimed in with a screenshot of a casserole she'd made, missing family dinners. Let's all just move on. Each message was like a pebble thrown at a window I'd just sealed shut. Not enough to break anything, just enough to remind me that they were still outside, waiting for me to come crawling back. No one asked how I was. No one said what she did was wrong. No one wondered why I'd felt so cornered. They just wanted me to undo the mess I didn't create. So, I stayed quiet. In the house, I found myself scrubbing baseboards that didn't need scrubbing, reorganizing the kitchen drawers, folding and refolding towels. I replaced the doorbell, installed blackout curtains in the bedroom, ordered frames for photos I'd taken but never printed. I hung them in the hallway, sunrises, foggy streets, stray cats, images that felt like proof of a life I had built without applause. Some days I felt proud. Others, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Because the truth is, even when you choose distance, it doesn't mean you stop wanting to be chosen. I still woke up thinking I should check my phone for some real message, an acknowledgement, a sign that someone in that house remembered who I was outside of the role I'd always played. But all I got were polite reminders to fall back into line. My days were full. Work at the clinic, editing photos late at night, errands, house projects. But the quiet in between felt sharper now. I'd never been someone who needed a crowd. I liked stillness. But this stillness wasn't soft. It echoed. Sometimes I caught myself rehearsing conversations out loud, imagining what I'd say if they actually apologized. What I'd say if they didn't. What I'd do if my mother showed up again. I never landed on anything satisfying. One night, after a long day photographing a couple who couldn't stop bickering between poses, I came home and stood in the living room for a long time without turning on the lights. The house was silent, dim, familiar. And for the first time, it felt heavy. I sat on the couch and tried to remember the last time I'd laughed with someone in this room. The last time someone sat across from me just to talk, not to take, not to fix, just to be there. The thought pressed down on me, slow and suffocating. It wasn't that I regretted what I'd done. I didn't. But being right doesn't stop you from feeling alone. That night, I slept with the hallway light on, just one bulb. A small defiance against the dark. In the morning, I made strong coffee, pulled on a hoodie, and took my camera into the yard. The garden bed was half prepped, soil turned over, but no plants yet. I knelt and started removing weeds by hand, one by one, fingers cold in the morning air. It wasn't about the weeds. It was about taking control of what I could. The house had become my mirror, strong, unfinished, marked by effort. But even mirrors need light to reflect anything at all. I was beginning to realize I couldn't do everything in isolation. Not forever. But I didn't want false connection either. If someone was going to step inside this house again, it had to be someone who saw me, not someone who looked past me to imagine what I could be traded for. The texts from my siblings stopped after I didn't respond for a week. I didn't miss them exactly. I missed what they could have been, what we could have been, if they'd ever truly made space for me to be more than the one who keeps quiet, who makes do, who disappears when convenient. I started sleeping full-time at the house after my apartment lease ended. One night, as I sat on the back steps sipping tea, the air turned brisk and sharp. I looked up and watched the sky shift. The moon was nearly full. I whispered into the dark, "You're not crazy for wanting more." It felt strange at first, then steady. I said it again, louder this time. "You're not crazy for wanting more." And for once, the silence that answered didn't hurt. It agreed. Then Elena, my closest friend, showed up on a Thursday, 3 weeks later, unannounced, holding a grocery bag in one arm and a bottle of red wine in the other. I opened the door, still wearing my cleaning gloves, one AirPod in, music humming faintly in my right ear. I blinked at her. "You didn't text," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "You haven't answered a text in almost a month." "I figured you forgot how doors work." "I didn't." She held the bag up. "I brought food." There was no point arguing. She walked past me like she owned the place, which was the closest thing I'd had to comfort lately. I closed the door behind her and peeled off the gloves. In the kitchen, she started unpacking. Crackers, soft cheese, grates, a container of something warm that smelled like roasted garlic. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her. "So," she said, slicing the foil on the wine bottle. Want to tell me what's going on, or should we eat first and pretend you're totally fine? I am fine. She gave me a look. Please. I've known you since before you knew what concealer was. You're not fine. I sighed, ran a hand through my hair, and grabbed 2 glasses. We sat at the small table by the window, the one I'd sanded and stained myself, the legs still a little uneven. She poured the wine, pushed a napkin toward me, and waited. They found out about the house, I finally said. My mom let herself in, gave a tour, left a note telling me to think practically. Her eyes widened. Wait, she came inside? How did she have a key? I gave it to her when I was sick last month. Forgot to ask for it back. She set her glass down harder than necessary. That's insane. I know. And then what? I confronted her. She said the house was too much for someone single. She was showing it to my brother and his wife. They're expecting. Her face twisted. So, she was just repurposing your life. I nodded. Exactly. She leaned back in her chair, staring at me like I was an unsolved puzzle. And what did you do? I changed the locks, stopped responding, told her she crossed a line. That's not just a line, she said. That's your entire boundary smashed with a crowbar. I let the silence settle between us, broken only by the faint creak of the walls and the ticking clock above the sink. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. What? The house? No. Standing up to them? I took a sip of wine and stared at the grain in the table. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth the silence, but then I remember how she looked when she walked through my door like it was hers. And I know I couldn't stay quiet this time. She nodded slowly. You shouldn't have to. But I did for years. And they liked it that way. She tore a piece of bread and dipped it into the container. I get it, really, but is this it? Is this what you wanted? A house that no one visits? A family that won't talk to you unless you apologize? It's what I needed. I was tired of shrinking to make room for everyone else. She met my eyes. And now that you've expanded, is there room for anyone else? The question hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed. I don't know. She tilted her head. You don't have to be either invisible or untouchable. There's space in between. I don't know if they deserve that space. They probably don't, she said, not missing a beat. But you do. You deserve connection. Real connection, not the kind that comes with conditions or keys made behind your back. I looked around the kitchen, the lighting I'd chosen, the walls I'd painted, the silence I'd curated so carefully. I wanted this to be mine, I said, without needing anyone's permission. It is yours, she said. But ownership doesn't mean isolation. I didn't respond. We finished eating in silence, not uncomfortable, just full of thoughts. Afterward, we moved to the couch. She curled her legs under her, sipping the last of the wine. I sat beside her, feet flat on the rug, hands resting on my knees. You're strong, she said gently. But you don't have to be alone to prove it. I closed my eyes. I just don't know how to be in the middle. It was always either be quiet and accepted or speak up and get shut out. She rested her head against my shoulder. Maybe this is the start of something different. Something where you decide who gets in and who doesn't. That night, after she left, I sat by the front door for a long time. I didn't check the cameras. I didn't check my phone. I just listened to the quiet and asked myself, if I let someone back in, would I recognize the sound of real belonging? I wasn't sure. But for the first time, I wanted to find out. Chloe texted me on a Monday, 5 weeks after Evelyn's last visit. Just a short message, can we talk? Just you and me, please. I stared at the screen for a full minute. I hadn't heard from her since the last group dinner, weeks before the house incident. She'd been quiet during the fallout. No messages, no defenses, no accusations, just silence. Now this. I thought about ignoring it, about letting the conversation die before it began. But something in the phrasing, "just you and me," landed differently. I replied, "Tomorrow, 5 at the house." She showed up right on time. She wore no makeup, no perfect hair, no curated outfit, just jeans, sneakers, and a loose gray sweater that made her look smaller than usual. I opened the door before she knocked. "Hi," she said carefully. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in slowly, looking around like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. I gestured toward the kitchen, and she followed. I offered her tea. She nodded. We sat for a moment. Neither of us spoke. She looked down at her hands, fiddling with the sleeves of her sweater. I waited. Finally, she took a breath. "I didn't know she was going to do that," she said quietly. "Bring someone, the staging woman." I didn't answer. I asked her for help. That part's true. But not like that. I never asked her to take your house. I looked at her. Her face was pale, eyes tired. Not performative, just raw. "You asked her for help with what?" I said. She hesitated, then leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We're not doing as well as it looks," she said. "Leo's business isn't stable. He took on some clients that didn't pay out. We've been behind on rent for months." I blinked. She pushed her hair behind one ear. "I didn't want to ask anyone." He wouldn't. His pride. "Yeah," I said, more bitterly than I intended. "That sounds familiar." I thought maybe she could co-sign something or help us refinance, but instead she started pushing this idea about your place, about how it was too much house for you, about how it would be more useful for a family. That word again. "She made it sound like you wouldn't mind," she added softly. I scoffed. "Of course she did. I didn't know she had taken your key. I didn't know she was showing it like it was already decided." I leaned back in my chair, pressing my fingertips together to keep my voice level. "So, you're saying it was her idea?" "I'm saying it spiraled, and I didn't stop it." That admission held weight. We sat in silence. My tea went cold. "I wanted to come sooner," she said. "But I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, and I didn't want to defend what she did, but I also couldn't just let you think I was fine with it." "Were you?" I asked. Her eyes met mine. "No." I studied her face. I thought about all the years I'd watched her slide into the family like a puzzle piece. How Evelyn praised her. How Leo was always the shining one. I'd spent years assuming they lived in a world of clean answers and easy choices. And now here she was, fragile, messy, human. "Why didn't you ask me directly?" I asked. She gave a weak smile. "Because I assumed you'd say no." "I probably would have." "I know." We both laughed. Just once, a short, surprised breath of irony. "I'm not angry at you," I said after a pause. "But I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt." "I don't expect you to," she said. "I just wanted to stop pretending everything was fine." The sun was dipping low outside, streaks of orange cutting across the floor. The house felt still again, but not empty. She stood slowly. "I won't come back unless you invite me." "I mean that." I nodded. At the door, she turned. "He's ashamed," she said. "He won't say it, but he is. About the business, about not being able to provide the way he thought he would." I opened the door for her. "I understand shame," I said. But it doesn't justify what happened. No, she agreed. It doesn't. She stepped outside, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said, your house is beautiful. This time, I believed her, and when I closed the door, it didn't feel like I was shutting her out. It felt like I was closing something that finally had an ending. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but not in the soothing way I'd come to love. It felt tight, like the walls were holding their breath. My conversation with Chloe kept echoing, her voice soft, her eyes avoiding mine. The way she said, he's ashamed. I sat on the couch long after midnight, sipping cold tea and thinking about Leo. My brother, the one who had always known exactly how to move through the world in a way I didn't. Charming, loud when it served him, quiet when it didn't. The one who never had to ask twice for anything, the one who somehow always had more room than the rest of us. I realized something that night. I had spent so long resenting how easily he received things that I never stopped to wonder what he might be hiding behind that ease. It didn't make what happened right, but it made it harder to flatten him into a villain. Still, that didn't mean I wanted to forgive. It just meant I couldn't ignore the nuance anymore. The next morning, I walked into the second bedroom, my almost studio, and stood in the middle of the floor. The pale light was soft and even, just the way I'd imagined when I first painted the walls. I stared at the space, thinking about how close I came to losing it without even realizing it. They had never seen me as permanent. That's what stung. Not just that they wanted the house, but that they thought I'd step aside, that I'd quietly move out like I'd always moved out of the way of conflict, of attention, of inheritance. And Evelyn. God, it hit me then in a way it hadn't before. She probably thought she was helping. Twisted as it was, she didn't think she was stealing. She thought she was correcting a mistake. A house in my name felt like a misplacement of resources to her, something unnatural, something to be fixed before it got out of hand. I sat on the floor and leaned against the wall, knees pulled up, forehead resting on my arms. This was the part no one talks about when they say boundaries are empowering. The part where you finally get what you want and then realize how much you lost along the way. The house was safe now. I had secured it, locked it down, but I hadn't prepared for the hollowness that came after reclaiming it. The next few days passed slowly. My routines remained intact. Work, edits, errands, projects. But I moved through them like someone else was steering. Not sad exactly, but detached. The idea came quietly in the middle of a Tuesday. I was rinsing dishes when it struck. Not a lightning bolt, not a grand epiphany, just a quiet, measured thought. What if I invite them here? Not to surrender, not to smooth things over, but to set the terms. My terms. The house had become a symbol of everything I'd fought for. Autonomy, respect, space. And yet, I'd spent the last few weeks defending it from behind locked doors. I hadn't opened it with pride. I'd hidden in it, protected myself. But maybe it was time to reclaim it in another way. I didn't want to reconcile for the sake of performance. I didn't want to hear excuses dressed up as affection. I wanted honesty, clarity, maybe even the beginning of something different, or maybe just closure. That night, I drafted the message. Simple, no theatrics. I'm making dinner this Sunday at the house. If you'd like to come, you're invited. Come as you are. I sent it to Evelyn, Leo, Sarah, and to my own surprise, Robert, too. Then I turned my phone face down and refused to obsess over their replies. It didn't take long. Leo was the first, "We'll be there." Then Sarah, "You're cooking? Can I bring dessert?" Even Robert replied with a thumbs up. That was his version of emotional availability. Evelyn didn't answer right away. I didn't expect her to. But late the next day, she sent, "Okay, thank you. No emoji, no elaboration. It was enough. I spent Saturday prepping, not obsessively, just intentionally. I made a grocery list, cleared the clutter from the hallway, cleaned the windows. I set the table with mismatched plates and cloth napkins I'd found at a thrift store. No centerpieces, no fake smiles, just food and space. I cooked slowly on Sunday. Roasted vegetables, baked herb chicken, a pot of lentils simmered on the stove, warm and rich with garlic and thyme. I made salad with shaved fennel because I liked the way it looked in the bowl. Not for them, for me. At 5:57, a car pulled up. I took a deep breath and opened the door before they knocked. Leo stepped in first, holding a bottle of wine. Chloe followed, glancing around like she hadn't seen the place in daylight. Sarah came next, wearing too much perfume and carrying a bakery box with a ribbon. Robert came in quietly, hands in his jacket pockets. Evelyn was last. She hesitated on the threshold. I met her eyes, then stepped aside. "Come in," I said, calm, even. She entered without a word. The house filled slowly, shoes by the door, jackets on hooks. Leo wandered through the living room, muttering, "You did all this yourself?" His voice didn't carry the usual edge. Sarah ran her fingers along the windowsill and said, "This paint color is perfect." I just nodded. We sat down at the table as the sun dipped low. The lighting was soft, warm. I poured water into mismatched glasses and passed dishes around. No speeches, no tension yet. We ate. Leo asked about the new camera I'd bought. Sarah showed a picture of a friend's baby. Robert said nothing, but kept reaching for more lentils. Even Evelyn commented that the chicken was well-balanced, whatever that meant. I didn't rush it. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was hosting to earn approval. I wasn't shrinking to fit them into the room. I had built this space and now they were sitting inside it on my terms. After dinner, I gave them a tour, the proper kind. "This is the guest room," I said. The walls took 3 coats. In the kitchen, I pointed to the open shelves. I hung those by myself. Twice, actually. The first time, they weren't level. They smiled. They nodded. No one interrupted. No one tried to correct me. In the bedroom, Sarah whispered, "It feels so calm here." "It is," I said. At the end of the tour, we returned to the living room. Chloe offered to help with dishes. I declined. I wanted to do it alone later, on my time. They stayed for a while, longer than I expected. No one brought up the incident. No one apologized, but there was a shift. Small, undeniable, a soft recognition in the air. When they stood to leave, Evelyn lingered near the door. She looked at me, not over me. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice was low. "You've made something beautiful." I nodded. "Thank you." She opened her mouth like she might say more, but then she just squeezed my hand once lightly and walked out. I stood at the door for a long moment after it closed. Not because I was unsure, but because I wasn't. They had come. They had seen. And I had remained whole. After everyone left, I cleaned the kitchen slowly, methodically. The dishes clinked softly in the sink. The leftover wine sat open on the counter, catching the last light from the window. It hadn't been perfect. No one had fallen to their knees apologizing. No one had delivered the speech I'd sometimes imagined, the one where they acknowledged every moment I'd been overlooked, every assumption they'd made about my silence. But something had shifted. For the first time, they had been guests in my space instead of me being a visitor in theirs. They had asked about my choices instead of questioning them. They had seen what I'd built instead of focusing on what they thought I lacked. It was a beginning. Maybe not the one I dreamed of, but one I could work with. The house felt different afterward. Still mine, but not defensive anymore. Like it had exhaled. Over the following weeks, the texts started again, but they were different now. Sarah sent a photo of a sunset from her apartment balcony. Made me think of your dining room lighting. Leo forwarded an article about small business photography trends. Thought you might find this interesting. Even Evelyn texted once, how is the garden coming along? Small gestures, nothing dramatic, but consistent in a way that felt intentional rather than obligatory. I didn't respond to every message immediately. I wasn't performing gratitude or rushing to rebuild what had been broken, but I didn't ignore them either. I was learning something new, that I could engage without disappearing. That I could set boundaries without building walls. That family could be something I participated in rather than something that happened to me. It would take time, maybe a long time. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and patterns that took years to form don't dissolve with a single dinner. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a choice in how this story continued. And that choice was mine to make, on my terms, in my house, where I belonged.